Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to At the Movies with Lo and Mo, episode 7.
Nice. Episode 7. Welcome.
Wow,
You did it, bud. First try,
good.
everybody. First try.
This is progress.
This is progress. This is wonderful.
So, we just got done. Lovely, lovely day outside. The sun's out on my end. It's a Sunday morning.
Hmm.
The birds are chirping. All is calm. We started our day by watching David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah, it was a good start to the day. Woke up, got some coffee, and then I was like, you know what? It's time for a horror sci-fi movie. So,
It's definitely a movie that you watch it and it makes you want to eat. Like it definitely you want to have something like goopy in front of you to eat, like something with a lot of sauce or like a lot of like liquids, like a soup or like pasta or
yeah, dude.
something. I don't know. Like
You just want a big
get
bowl of
hungry watching this
slop,
movie.
dude. You just want a big bowl of slop. Just kind of just maybe it like eats away the bowl
Sure.
or something when you're doing it. Like just something that's so acidic that it just breaks down. That's what you really want.
Yeah, it definitely makes you want to throw up on your food before you eat it.
That's how I eat
Um,
normally.
this movie wasn't a shock for you.
No, I was like, oh, finally, someone like me. My people.
Representation.
My people. I thought that I'd say that during a Scorsese film, but hey, here we are. Here we are.
So, a few notes on this before we talk about our feelings on it that I think are interesting. We talked about how Dead Zone kind of doesn't feel like a Cronenberg movie,
Hmm.
and it was kind of his best run at like a major studio film.
Yeah.
This to me feels like both a Cronenberg movie and a major studio film somehow.
This definitely
Um,
has a Cronenberg feel to it. Like you can tell that this is a Cronenberg movie. Where the Dead Zone, you were left like if you didn't know and you sat down to watch it, you really couldn't pick who the director was. But this one is very clearly has the stamp of David Cronenberg on it.
yeah, and beyond the even beyond the body horror stuff, like the feel of the movie is Cronenberg. The industrial look of the pods, where Jeff Goldblum lives, like kind of
Yep.
this rundown like warehouse setting kind of thing. It's very cold looking. Um and the movie opens with score from Howard Shore, who I was looking at. I knew I recognized the name. He did the score for The Brood. He did the score for Videodrome.
Nice.
He also did the score for Martin Scorsese's After Hours.
It's interesting how these
We
movies
watched
are
recently.
starting to connect a little bit. Like when you, I mean, obviously it's the same time period, so you're going to see a lot of like kind of like cross and stuff with it. But it's interesting
Yeah,
to see these directors kind of use some of the same talent as far as like the composer goes.
definitely. Yeah. At foreboding, like as soon as the fly shows up on the screen, like the title card, and it goes like blah blah. It has these like big chords. Um, I just immediately felt like I was in a Cronenberg movie. Like I felt like it was like buckle your seatbelt, like that you're back in the
Yeah,
back on the saddle, you
that
know.
was one of the first things you
Um,
said when we were
and then
watching it.
yeah, the other thing I want to mention is that curiously enough, Mel Brooks produced this movie. Um, you'll see the Brooks film title card. I know that he purposely kept his name off of the credits because he didn't want people to expect a funny movie.
Yeah.
I remember a story from one of my screenwriting teacher in college. He said that the theater that he grew up by when this movie came out was giving out the fly hats when you went to go see the movie, and it had like antennas on it.
Okay.
And everyone, so fact that it said Brooks film and the fact that they were I don't know if nobody saw the trailer or what the deal was, but the fact that it said Brooks film and the fact that the theater was giving out funny hats for the movie made a
Yeah.
lot of people think that this was going to be very funny.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it is very funny,
Yeah. It is.
but did not get what they were expecting. This is a movie that feels like it was designed to be seen with people. Like I would love to have been in that theater crowd the night this opened and to be
Yeah.
around people and to hear people like going like, "Ooh,"
There's a lot of there's a lot of like parts in this movie where there's a lot of reactionary type um film and scenes where it would have been great, like you said, to just be in there and just hearing those squirms and maybe the seats creak a little bit because people are getting on uneasy. Because it definitely made me feel uneasy at parts.
So, all of that being said, yeah, what did you know about The Fly going in? And let's talk about our reaction to this movie.
You know what, man? I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't really know much about The Fly. I've heard about it before. I've never seen it. Just a little bit of insight that you gave me before we started watching was kind of all I went in there knowing. And I did look it up because I always look up how much like the budget was so I can kind of grasp like what they're going for. And they had a $16.5 million budget for this film. And it fully delivers on that. When you look at a budget that's that big, you kind of expect, a lot of different, effects, different scenes. And Cronenberg delivers on it. He delivers on it from the body horror perspective when we see Jeff Goldblum's character start to slowly transition into Bunderfly, which I thought was a funny little take on it, like that they were coming together as one, which is what the movie really says. And I think the part that stuck out for me in this was when he's trying to fix himself. He's at his computer and his teeth just like all fall out onto the keyboard of the computer. And that's the part where I was like, oh, okay. And then that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the movie. There was some earlier effects, and we see him transform into like the holes and like the fly type character. But when his teeth finally like fall out, that was when we fully transition into what we come to expect in the next one with the skin and the shedding and everything. And one of my second favorite scene besides the one with the teeth is when he's in that bar and he's fully like feeling himself and he goes to arm wrestle the guy at the bar and to take his girl home as a prize. He grabs his hand so much that pus starts coming out of his hand, like that, just that saliva, that pus, and then just snaps his forearm right there. And everybody in the bar's so shocked, besides the girl that he's taking home, grabs her and they're off to just have a great time. She just witnessed her boyfriend's arm get broken and she's like, oh, this will be fun. Let's go.
It's so funny because on their walk, she says something about like, she was like, "So you're a bodybuilder or something?" And I, he goes, "I build bodies. I break them and then I build them or something like
Mm-hmm.
that." And she goes, "Well, you sure broke Bobby." This movie is like, even by my standards, by somebody who loves Cronenberg and like likes the body horror thing, like this movie is gross.
Yeah,
This movie's
extremely.
really gross. It is somehow, for some reason, it clicked with people. Like at a time, like it got people, it got butts and seats. People went to see this movie. It was successful. Um, and I think there's a few reasons for that. I also want to mention the effects won an Academy Award, which
No,
is
I mean it definitely deserves it.
interesting.
It definitely deserves it. The effects were some of the best I've even seen. Even when we talk about current, like cinema and current film, and we've lost this kind of practical effect in movies now. So going back to a time where that's all they had in 1986, it definitely deserves an award. And I think even if you pulled off something like this now, using those effects, I would still say it deserves an award. It was well done.
Puppet at the end is unbelievable. The way that it, and I guess this is skipping ahead, not that we really recap plots anyways, but um, when Gina Davis is Veronica is putting up the shotgun to destroy the Brundlefly odd fusion creature at the very end, the puppet who is the Brundlefly takes the shotgun and like puts it to its head. It's so believable
Yeah.
as a creature,
Mm-hmm.
like this thing, obviously it's like not Jeff Goldblum anymore. It's not Jeff Goldblum acting, but it is so believable that that is a living thing, that wants put out of its misery. It
Yeah. I mean, at that
away.
point, I don't really blame it. I mean, it just tried so hard to become human again. That's all he wanted was to just be human, and he ends up not even coming close. He gets fused with the pod that broke, and you just see he's got like a shark fin of metal coming out of him
Yeah.
now. It's just like it's just fully to that point where you're like, wow, you feel for him. You're like, this is it.
Did you happen to see how much it made?
I did. Well,
It,
no, I didn't see how much total gross. I saw how much it made opening weekend. It made $7 million opening weekend.
the total made 60 million.
Wow.
It is Cronenberg's most successful, commercially successful film. Cronenberg rewrote the script for this, and I love the idea that he's like talking to Fox executives and Mel Brooks, and they're like, "So what do you have for us?" And he's like, "So." His nails squirt pus all over the mirror. His teeth fall out. He gradually turns into an actual fly. Uh, he gets fused with metal shards, and we blow its head off at the end of the movie and show the full thing. And Mel Brooks and Fox were like, "Here's sixteen point
Yeah,
five
they're
million
like, here you
dollars."
go. Just have fun with that. That sounds great. Hey, I mean,
Fun.
it's good though. Imagine if they said no to this. I mean, when you spend 16.5 million on a film and your overall gross ends up being 60 million, that's absolutely phenomenal. As far as, I mean, that's a huge return on investment. I'm sure the producers were happy.
Um, I think that this movie. So we said that it feels like a Cronenberg movie,
Mm.
and that's true. But there's something that separates it from me, and it's not just the budget or anything, um, or the major studio stuff. So I think that a lot of times, obviously, there's focus on like body, and like flesh and body, and like sex is like
Yeah.
a common theme in his movies and stuff. But I think a lot of times when you're watching Cronenberg, like I think about The Brood, I think about Videodrome, you're focusing on one character. It's just kind of like a study of their psyche. Like it's more cerebral, it's more head.
Yeah.
What's this person thinking? What motivates them? This movie feels like the opposite. It feels like it's all heart. And I think that that's also what attracted people,
Yep.
is because just as much as it is a monster movie and like a sci-fi horror movie and all this stuff, it's also a tragedy. It's a
Oh,
romance.
100%.
I mean, like
100%. Yeah.
you spend the first third of the movie just really being charmed by Jeff Goldblum's character and getting
Yeah.
to know Gina Davis and wanting them to, you like their relationship and
Yeah.
you want them to be
I
happy.
think that's
That's
interesting.
ultimately it's what makes you invest in them the rest of the film, you
Well,
know?
they do a really good job at the beginning, like you in that first third, in that first like act when he's at that um like conference or whatever that is at the beginning, and she's a journalist. Veronica's a journalist trying to find the next big story, and he's not so. I feel like he's uncomfortable when he's out and around, which is interesting to kind of see with how like eccentric he is with everything as it goes on with this movie. But it's almost like forced her back to his place to just get the story. But he didn't want her to get the story; he just wanted her. He wanted someone to talk to,
Right.
and then finds out she's a journalist and about has like a breakdown. And then as the film goes on a little bit, they get closer and closer. She starts spending more and more time, and you see a really strong bond, a strong love formed right before our eyes, which sets the tone and gets us as the viewer invested into this film and invested into these characters. And I don't think if they spent that time at the beginning, you wouldn't feel as invested. And like you said, the tragedy, the heart of this film, as it progresses with Seth and becoming the Fly, we wouldn't have felt as bad as we did with it if they didn't establish this in the beginning.
But like for a film like this or a film like Videodrome, feels like there is no filler. Like there's no bullshit, there's no padding. I read a thing about his opinion on sequels, and he said that his movies have a definitive beginning and a definitive end, and he does that on purpose. What's interesting about that, to me, is that this movie, I mean, it is literally, it has a definitive beginning and end because the movie begins with him courting her at that conference. There's no lead up. It's just
Yep.
immediately you're introduced to these two characters. The movie ends with her blowing the fly's head off, and that's it. It's the
Yeah.
end of the movie. It is,
Yeah. Roll
yeah, like in
credits.
the literal sense, it is a definitive beginning, definitive end. There is no bullshit. It's an hour and a half. It is just, it seems like there's, even with him slowly transforming into a fly, like even the gradual transformation, the pacing feels perfect. Like there's nothing that where you're like, oh, geez, this is taking a while or anything.
No,
You're
it was
really
really perfectly
sucked
timed.
in the whole way.
It's perfectly timed with that transition to like from start to finish. I thought it was cool though when we first start seeing him transition because obviously I've never seen this movie and I didn't really know what it was about. I was like, and I even cracked a joke too. I was like, oh, it's a superhero movie because they did that like montage in there where he was so strong and he was like doing flips and gymnastic routines and he was on top of the world and you're like, wow, this man finally gets it, and then only to be just brought down throughout the each and every step after that. You're like, wow,
Yeah.
just beats you down.
I had a you mentioned this, so you mentioned when he goes to the bar. So he gets fed up with Gina Davis because she won't go through the transporter. He wants to put her through, and she won't do it. So he gets like fed up, and at this point, he is already turning into the Fly. But like you said, he's at this beginning cycle where he is kind of just getting all of these powers and these abilities and the stamina.
Yep.
So he goes to the bar to pick up that girl. Um, what's interesting to me is that like once Gina Davis walks in on, he's like he's gonna force this girl he brought home from the bar into the transporter. Gina Davis catches them. Uh, then the girl leaves, and him and Gina Davis have a conversation. But he starts to talk about like how she is like a coward, and he's like hitting things, and like he's, if he was a normal person and not a
Hmm.
fly, and if this was a normal relationship, it would be very like emotionally or verbally abusive.
Yeah.
And got me thinking, like, is this who Jeff Goldblum's character, like, does this actually have to do with his transformation? Or as we see from the beginning, he clearly values like women as prizes, as trophies, kind
Yep.
of thing. Is this the kind of person he would have been regardless of his transformation?
It, yeah, I think I
That
agree
was
with you because it makes him the fullest at that point, at kind of like the apex of his before he starts transforming like fully into that. At that, I think it made him the I don't want to say best version of himself because it really wasn't, but it makes him like the truest form of himself, of who he feels that he is, without any boundaries, without any like
yeah,
something
absolutely.
holding him back. At the apex before he starts to transform, it's just fully that's who he wants to be. He's strong, he's free. He keeps saying that throughout the thing too. He's like, I'm finally free, I'm finally free. So I agree with you in the thought that this is who he truly wants to be, or truly is on a deep level.
So the director of the sequel and also the person that did the effects for this, also did the effects for Gremlins, which is another one of my favorite films. Chris Wallace, he designed the makeup to represent like stages of aging. He wanted,
Interesting.
as this process goes on, it's like you are becoming, you see him become after his youthful energy and being able to do flips and last in bed for hours and hours and all
Yeah.
this stuff. You see him start to, debilitate or become debilitated, and he's using two canes
Yep.
at one point. And
Barely able to
um
stand.
they wanted his skin to continue to like bruise and discolor and just kind of like, as the aging process would. But because of when the movie came out, a lot of people interpreted it as like a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic,
I could
which
see
was
that.
interesting.
I could see that.
And Cronenberg said, yeah, Cronenberg was like, this is not what I had intended, but it makes complete sense that at the time an audience would connect this with
Hmm.
something that was happening. And the idea of, like you said, like we relate to these characters so much. It's interesting because you relate to almost all of them. I mean, there's three main characters. So Seth Brundle, you relate to this person because they are suffering. Dana Davis, you relate to because she is seeing someone she loves suffer.
Yeah. Finally,
And
too.
then
She's with
even,
somebody she loves.
right, and even her asshole boss, ex-boyfriend, and a guy who's trying to scoop her away from Brundle the whole time. Even at the end of the film, I start to have a little bit of sympathy for him because even though he is helping her, even if it's not for the right reasons,
Yeah.
which I don't know. At the beginning of the movie, he's like, oh, he sees Brundle as a threat because he's a man that she's interested in.
Hmm.
Clearly, it's not really the case at the end of the movie. But I start to sympathize with his character too because he is kind of putting it all out there for this woman that he cares about, and even though he's an asshole, I mean, this is like one of the scariest things that could ever happen to someone. And he is similarly to us watching Gina Davis seeing Jeff Goldblum suffer, he is seeing Gina Davis suffer, and he goes through the ringer at the end of this. Man, he gets his fist melted, he gets his leg melted. It's gnarly stuff.
You know what was interesting, and I wanted to bring this up too. Now you're more of the horror guy than I am, but it probably wasn't the first time I saw it, but it's the first time that I've been made aware or kind of seen it. So usually when you think horror or like sci-fi, the majority of the world gets affected by what's going on. So there's like a common issue or a villain or a killer, and the whole world gets kind of like spun up in it. This was the first time that I think I realized or even seen a movie where nobody gets hurt in this movie as a horror movie. Like nobody gets hurt besides like an internal hurt as far as like the heart and Gina Davis's character. Jeff Goldblum or Seth gets hurt because he can't ever get back to being human. The only person that gets like hurt badly is Stathis. When he gets when the fly starts like vomiting on him and just like melts away his skin and his hands become numb and his foot. Nobody else in the world gets affected by Brundlefly besides a couple people. Like nobody gets hurt. It's not a big thing. It's not like going crazy about the town. It's just an isolated incident, which was interesting. It was cool. I really liked that.
Yeah. It's definitely not traditional in the sense that there are not like kills in this movie, you know. In fact, the only kill is the one at the end, and it's a mercy kill, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I think that's interesting. Was something I read is that there was a scene initially in the script, and they showed a couple of rough cuts and they had taken some things out. They never actually filmed this, but there was a scene initially where the Brundlefly accidentally kills an old woman by puking on her.
Oh, okay.
And they never filmed it, which I think is good because, like you said, I like how this plays
Yeah,
out.
I
I really
think. Yeah, I'm really glad they didn't go with that.
other thing was in the initial script and one of the viewings they did, they had the maggot scene, the birth,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the film to like shock audiences. But because of the reaction, they ended up resequencing it in the movie. And I also think that works because this movie doesn't need any kind of twist, I don't think, to
No.
leave you feeling like, like it doesn't need anything to shock you. The whole film itself does stay with you. It's effective, and the where they put the scene in the movie as a dream sequence is effective for you to understand. The last thing that I want to bring up before we talk about our rankings is the humor in this movie. I think the writing, and David Cronenberg. So he there was an initial script that was rewritten twice, and then when Cronenberg got on the project, this is so crazy because you told me you were watching Total Recall last night.
Mm-hmm.
Cronenberg was originally attached to Total Recall
Oh
and
wow.
wasn't able to direct this film. And then what happened was the proposed director for this film, his daughter passed away in an accident, and he was unable to attach himself to the project. And then Cronenberg was no longer attached to Total Recall, so they reapproached him, and he was able to take it. Um,
Wow.
he
What
wrote
different both of those movies would have been if that
right,
didn't happen.
right.
That's insane.
This stands out from Cronenberg's films in the sense that this has more humor in it than, I mean, his films are pretty humorless. They're pretty
Yeah,
cold
they're
and just like
dry.
bleak,
Yeah.
you know. And maybe it also maybe has to do with Goldblum. I think he plays the character perfectly. But he is a charmer from the get-go when he gets her into his loft and he's playing the piano and he's like, "Well, I can't let you leave alive now,"
Mm-hmm.
and then as a joke, and then even as he's turning into the fly, line that made me laugh is when Gina Davis catches him with the girl from the bar. He says to the girl from the bar, "I forgot to tell you I live with my mom. Mom, this is Tony." It's like he really, even like as he gradually becomes the fly up until the point where he is finally just like is disintegrating,
Yeah.
literally. He is making quips and stuff. I mean, even one of the saddest moments in the movie is he's kind of in this last stage, and Gina Davis visits his apartment to see him like one last time, and it breaks both of their hearts. They both end up sobbing at the end of the scene, but during the scene, he is talking about like, you ever heard of insect politics? No, and he's got these like really unique
Yeah.
quips about him. He really is a charming
Where he's like,
character,
I just wanted to be the first insect politician, and I was like, wait, what? You wanted to be the first insect politician?
Oh,
Probably be
it's
better than what we have now.
this movie is fascinating to me because it is definitely a Cronenberg movie through and through. It separates itself from the rest of his filmography, both because of how successful it was like on a mainstream level,
Yeah.
and because of the heart and the writing is it's all just a little bit different than you would expect from him.
Hmm.
With that being said, um, where would you rank this in
Well,
Cronenberg's filmography?
you go first since it's
Yep.
you.
I would say that because it is I would say that just because it is maybe a little less cerebral than his usual stuff, like I think some people that may be the one thing that some people have against this movie is they think like, oh, like he makes, movies that are you have to really think and it's hard to wrap your head around, and this is a little dumbed down. But
Mm,
I think that that's like I don't think that necessarily something not be or something being accessible means that it's down. Like I think there's a lot here to meditate on, and there's a lot that sticks with you. Um, I do still think that if I was going to tell somebody to watch a Cronenberg movie, like if they really wanted to know what he was about, I would tell them to watch The Brood, or I would tell them to watch Videodrome. But if I was recommending Cronenberg movie to someone who is just a horror fan, just wants to see, a classic horror movie that they've never seen before,
mm,
is absolutely the one I would recommend to them. And so for that reason, this movie is going to rank third for me in my list. Number three, The Fly. Number four, Shivers. Number five, Fast Company. Number six, Scanners. Number seven, Dead Zone. And number eight, Rabid.
nice.
Passing it off to you, my friend.
Yeah, so when we originally so before we sat down and I opened up the rankings, I really was kind of like I didn't know where to put this one. But as we talked about it and I kind of was able to analyze and really appreciate some parts, I was really torn in between where I should put this as far as the rankings go, and I'm actually going to put it as my fourth film. So my films would be Videodrome, Brood, Shivers, The Fly, Fast Company, Scanners, The Dead Zone, and then Rabbit. I think I'm gonna put it at the fourth because not that it was, I don't think that it was worse than the movies ahead of it. I just think it was different, and I appreciated the ones before it a little bit different than I did this one. They're all great in their own sense of like film, and I agree with you when you say as far as like a recommendation goes, you have to be careful who you actually recommend this film to and like what they're going for. But the films before it, I think you can give a solid recommendation for this and you would get a pretty good like thank you from the people that you recommended it to if they weren't familiar with them. Where this one could go either way with some people.
I think this is like almost comparable to a Scorsese standpoint, like The King of Comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might put that on and be like, "This is a Scorsese movie," and then as they watch it, they would go, "Oh, this is definitely a Scorsese
Yeah.
movie." But it is funnier. It is different than his usual thing, and even though his imprint is on it, it stands kind of apart from a lot of the stuff he made around the same time.
So a new segment of our show at the movies. Do you have any movie recommendations outside of what we've been watching or anything you watched recently that you'd like to just
Yes. Let's pull up the old letterbox here. Here's a new plug for you guys. If you want to follow me, I'm at AV Mook on Letterboxd. Um, Mostly watching the kind of stuff we talk about here, horror, obscure stuff. Um, yeah, I've got two. I watched this weekend. I watched Freaky with Vince Vaughn,
nice? That's what you're talking
which
about.
is a Freaky Friday horror adaptation that could very easily be stupid, like very dumb. And instead, I was shocked at how good it was. It was very funny. The kills are very gory and unique. Um, it's just a strong movie. It plays with a lot of teen horror tropes and
Nice.
also pays tribute to movies that I love, like Friday the 13th and Halloween. So I had a really great time with that one, and that's available for rent. It's like $5.99. Other one that I would recommend is Annihilation, which I saw in theaters and hadn't seen it since then. It is another sci-fi horror movie, and is beautiful to look at. It is like stunning. The visuals are stunning. It also has some of the most disturbing scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time. So it really strikes that balance of being like something beautiful and genuinely terrifying. Natalie Portman is in it. Jennifer Jason Leigh, Oscar Isaac. Um, I don't know how to describe it outside of that. There's just a lot of creature stuff going on, and it is a little out there and a psychedelic. It's a lot to think about. There's not maybe a concrete ending,
Yeah.
but it is a very one of a kind film. So I would recommend those two.
Hell yeah.
What you-
So I don't really have any movies to recommend, but the movies that I watched this week, I watched Total Recall, the original one, which was, we talked about it earlier. I thought it was really funny, and I really like that one. I think it brings up a lot of like questions as well when you're watching it, and I enjoyed the effects and really appreciate Arnold as an actor a little bit.
Yeah,
You have to appreciate Arnold as an actor. That man has done so much in his life, and I don't think that like he really gets a lot of like credit for the different things that he's done. I mean, being like governor, the best bodybuilder of his time, and then being an actor as well, and so many different roles. It was good to see.
no joke. I watched that for the first time this past year, and it is the movie that made me want to watch more Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Yeah.
Because I had seen the Predator. I'd seen Predator. I was like, yeah, I like Predator. Predator's cool. An action movie, action sci-fi kind of thing. And I'd seen Jingle All the Way, holiday classic. I was like, oh, it's funny because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and he's a
Mm-hmm.
family man and he says, "Give me the cookies" and all that stuff. Drop the cookie. Uh, this was the movie that I was like, damn, like he is perfect for this like sci-fi action dystopian.
He's like
It
Captain Camp, dude.
sets the
He's
tone.
Captain Camp. A
It
lot of
sets
these,
the tone for other movies like The Running Man that he's in and stuff like
yeah,
that. Like
great movie.
these movies where it's just like there's a little bit of a sci-fi bend, but it's just a chance for Arnold to do
Yeah.
his thing. And the effects that you mentioned are in that movie really really amazing. The stuff that freaks me out every time is when they're exposed to the Martian air and their eyes are popping
Mm-hmm.
out of their heads.
I do have a question for our viewers. I have two actually. My first question would be, so in the comments, to promote a little comment. So I was thinking, I haven't talked to Aaron about this yet, but what would you think if we did some one-off series that aren't on Tuesdays, or these add to movies, or maybe do like a fan favorite Fridays or something like that, where you submit a movie to us that you really enjoyed. It could be any time period. It could be 1970 to current, and just let us know, like, hey, I'd really like you guys to review this movie, and we'll put it out as a one-off, maybe once a month or however it comes out, and we'll do like a fan favorite Friday. Or slash, would you like to see more independent film reviews, such as like Rent a Pale or any movies like that are currently coming out that have more of a smaller following and an independent feel? Let us know in the comments what you think and what you would like to see, because me and him have talked before. Maybe do some one-off special episodes in addition to what we're doing now, because we've really enjoyed doing these series. We really enjoyed them.
I love that. I love that idea. I like, I obviously want people to feel engaged with the work that we're creating and love the movies we're watching, but it is kind of the one thing that I get to do to get my brain away from work
Mm-hmm.
is watch movies. So I would love to know what people we would like or want to know our thoughts on. So absolutely sound off in the comments and let us know what you're thinking and let's see if we can get something going.
And my second question before we end it is, 60% of you that are watching this right now are not subscribed to this YouTube channel. What are you doing? What are you doing? 60% of you are not subscribed? Let's do it. Let's do it for Lomo. Let's do it for At the Movies. And most of all, do it so you can see more Arnold Schwarzenegger recommendations for movies.
Absolutely. There's no other way to find out what Arnold Schwarzenegger movies are good or bad. You just
Mhm.
subscribing to the channel is the only way to know.
Yeah.
Uh, so make sure you go ahead and do that for us. If you like and share, um, those are things you can do for free that help us out immensely. And lastly, as always, if you are subscribed, if you are sharing, if you are enjoying these videos, thank you for watching. We really do
We
appreciate
appreciate
it
you.
and enjoy doing it. So next week we have a wild one.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, you know who we're
I
watching?
know what we're watching.
We are watching The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yep.
Uh, and this is a controversial film from its time.
Oh, yeah.
It stars Willem Dafoe, who I love. I am kind of like The Color of Money. I think biblical epics are certainly not my forte in terms of
Me either.
films. But I am excited because I like the director and I like the lead and I like movies that are polarizing. So
It'll
I'm
be
very
good.
curious to see what we're gonna walk into.
It'll be a good one.
So that being said, we'll see you back here at the home theater on next Tuesday.
Have a good one. Thanks for watching At the Movies.
Hey.